Hello and welcome to Destination Draft Day, your one-stop shop for all things NFL Draft. We are here to talk about the defensive side of things. We have finally went through all the positions on the offensive side, and now we are moving on to what a lot of people really matter. It matters more to them, and defense wins championships. The whole mantra, the whole saying, you guys know it. And today we're going to talk about some of these defensive pieces that could help your team win a championship. Nick, obviously we've been doing this for a long time. We've come up, I believe, on a year very shortly for doing this show. 2022, though, has a lot in store. How are you doing, though, on this Friday, and how are you looking forward to the upcoming season as we finally get this Hall of Fame game kicked off to officially start the season?
How much of the Hall of Fame game did you watch? The whole thing?
I watched a few quarters, but I would be lying if I said I wasn't kind of on my phone and I'm looking up every now and then.
I tried. I watched about 10 seconds of it. I had no interest, but Danucci was in there. He was landing up. Listen, I'm doing well. I'm not doing as well as Josh Allen right now. Cha-ching, cha-ching. As predicted on this show last week, second highest paid quarterback of all time. And quite honestly, I think it's a good deal for the Bills. I'm sure that number will be surpassed here. And Buffalo, they knew they had their guy. You got to wonder now, what do the Jets and Giants think? Because they passed on him. And now you got to wonder, what's Lamar Jackson, who actually has won an MVP, going to get paid? So a lot of dominoes that are going to fall from this. But your thoughts here, Michael, now on the Bills' window to win the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, I really think that the window remains open for as long as Josh Allen is playing at a high level because they have such an impressive roster. And I know that they will have to find a way to continue to add that talent, continue to find cheaper options as we head into the more crucial years of Josh Allen's contract. But I think that the Bills have done a phenomenal job of finding talent for the value that they're willing to pay, hitting well in the draft. And if they continue that, especially with guys like McDermott as their head coach, then they have a very nice foundation to find success and really a very realistic shot of winning a Super Bowl during this Josh Allen era for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, we shall see then what happens. And I think the Bills are going to be right back in the AFC Championship game this upcoming season. The Patriots, Michael, have a new director of player personnel. Longtime director Nick Caserio, of course, now with the Texans, who have Deshaun Watson in camp, but he's not practicing. Any thoughts on him, and your thoughts overall on how things might change as far as player personnel goes without a Caserio and will Bill Belichick kind of be solely in charge now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't expect too much change. I think that you see a lot of player retainment and staff retainment. I mean, in the Patriots organization, to where they're promoting guys from within. And I think for the Patriots, that's crucial for them. And, it's going to be a lot of the same ideals and processes. Now, how they do, I hope, we see a little bit more efficient drafting. I think, there's been a little bit of misses on the first round pick side, whether it's due to the players just not being as good as expected or due to maybe lack of scheme fit or just, some of the bad luck, which is injuries, which I'm okay just overlooking. But I think there's still plenty of work to be done for the Patriots to kind of make this work long-term without Brady. And, I think that's kind of the crucial part is, can you really take this expensive roster right now and continue to hit on draft picks, hit on low-value contracts to where further down the road, if Mac Jones is good and needs money, you aren't saying, okay, well, now we are just going to be weak at corner or weak at defensive linebacker unit or whatever.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, another story here, which is interesting, which is that Robert Griffin III is headed to ESPN. He still wants to play, so he hasn't opt out in his contract if the opportunity arises. He's with the Ravens last year as a backup. He was playing a bit in the game when Lamar Jackson was out with COVID, and now he's going to be doing college football for ESPN. I'm surprised, Michael, that nobody has signed Robert Griffin III to be a backup quarterback for this season.
Yeah, I think the big question mark for him is just durability. I mean, even when he came in for that Thanksgiving game, he ended up getting hurt again. So that's where the issue arises. Talent-wise, he's probably perfectly fine to be a backup and, really fill in pretty well for a lot of teams. But it's that question of, can we have this guy as a backup? And if things go south and our starter gets injured, we have this guy start the rest of the season. And if you aren't really confident in that, then you're probably going to be a little bit less optimistic about signing him to be your safety blanket as QB2.
Yeah, but a lot of confidence for some reason by the Titans today signing Matt Barkley as their backup quarterback. Barkley's terrible. He was so overhyped in college. Maybe he had 2 or 3 good games. What is it with these USC quarterbacks, Michael, that just get 9 lives in the NFL?
I think for a guy like Barkley, there's just been so much experience with him around the league as a backup, and that kind of comes in plenty of enticing intrigue for a lot of teams. So Barkley, probably won't ever be anything special, but I think that's the main reason for the overall USC thing. I think it's just a lot of them end up in situations where you're kind of saying, look, we want to see this guy get another chance because, you saw Carson Palmer carve out a pretty nice career despite having some concerns, I guess, early. I think, guys like Mark Sanchez found success in terms of winning. So a lot of teams still wanted to really tap into that and see what they could do. Sam Darnold, probably, even if you don't think he's going to be good, probably had one of the worst situations to have success. So really just all that combined really just has sort of created this timeline of let's give the USC QBs a few more chances.
Yeah, I'll say. I mean, Barkley, he might be like the longest tenured USC quarterback in the NFL dating back to 2005 as far as years go. I think he's probably surpassed Leinart. Got to be close with Sanchez, if not more. Darnold, of course, only a few years in, but it's pretty wild. Other team to talk about is the Giants. Michael, big brawl on the first day of practice. And Daniel Jones ended up at the bottom of the pile. So Joe Judge says, we're going to run some laps here, guys. And then 3 members of the Giants retire. I guess they didn't want to run. Joe Thuney, one of them, and then some other guys as offensive linemen as well. What's your take on that whole situation there? What's going on with the Giants and training camp? I saw Michael Irvin on NFL Network that said that's exactly what Joe wanted. He's going right away. It means they're competing. They're ready to go. But people are retiring here, especially the 2 offensive linemen, an already weak offensive line that really didn't do anything to replace Kevin Zeitler. What are your thoughts here on the Giants situation?
Yeah, I think that definitely not ideal to be losing pieces. I think that's first and foremost an easy thing to say. But overall, I'm not too worried about the fights breaking out. We've seen it happen all the time. I remember the year the Panthers made it to the Super Bowl. There was this huge fight that broke out between Cam Newton and Josh Norman. And everyone was saying, oh, that's terrible for the Panthers. Look at that. And then the Panthers ended up having a incredible season, and both Norman and Cam Newton put up tremendous years. So a fight in itself doesn't necessarily matter that much. But yeah, there is question marks about just the retirements that have happened. You really hope that these are just guys that are saying, look, I don't have that drive anymore, more so than saying, okay, I'm sick of this guy already, I'm retiring. I don't think we're going to find out, just because I don't think these guys are going to go to the media about it. They're just kind of, ending it short. But for the Giants, it's not necessarily a disaster situation, but also it's something to monitor, I think, because it is weird that all these players who, especially Looney, who was talking about, oh, I love running, I love the discipline side of football, keep us in check, keep us accountable, then retires after, the first major punishment day. I don't know. We'll see, but I would think for the most part it's not too big a deal. It's just a fight that broke out for the team, and Joe Judge just putting an end to it.
What I think is a big deal for the Giants is, one, Saquon Barkley, who now the reports out today are he will at best be ready for week 3, but week 1 hasn't been ruled out yet. That's very crucial to any sort of success with the New York Giants, of course. And then the other news now is Kenny Golladay is going to be out 3 weeks due to a hamstring pull. So I don't know, Michael. It's not like these guys are going to play much in the preseason anyway, but how does Kenny Golladay get chemistry with Daniel Jones if he's not on the field in training camp?
Yeah, and I think that's certainly a legitimate concern and issue. You definitely want to see Golladay kind of getting back into the swing of things because of all the time that he missed prior. But at the same time, talent is going to prevail, I feel like, in both situations. So for a guy like Barkley, maybe it's a little bit better that you're not really letting him get too many carries, not too much mileage on him. And then for a guy like Golladay, I think he's one of those dependable receivers that you don't necessarily need the chemistry side of things. You put the ball up to him and he's going to come down and make some great catches. Where, if it were a speedster type guy that really just kind of needs to get the pacing of his routes figured out, then I would be a little bit more concerned. But Golladay, I don't think you're going to have as many issues. And overall, I think the whole timing thing, the whole, getting in rhythm with your QB is kind of overrated. I get it 100%, but at the same time, good wide receivers and good quarterbacks can just throw it to and make catches from whoever. And really it's just about that coming to truth on the field for both Daniel Jones and Kenny Golladay.
Another wide receiver we got to talk about is Julio Jones, who has really just not participating much right now in training camp with the Titans. I really don't know how he's going to fit in. Obviously, he's an addition for them, of course, makes them better at the wide receiver position. But so much of their game is based on running the ball. So how is this going to work? Obviously, it's either going to be, less carries for Henry because they're trying to go to Jones more, or maybe that hurts them. What do you think the game plan should be for the Titans offensively this season?
Oh, you feed Derrick Henry. Absolutely. I mean, you have pieces that are going to be, impressive. Julio, A.J. Brown, they're going to find ways to produce. But your offense has always found the most success when Derrick Henry is the focal point. You paid him for a reason. Absolutely a dominant runner who wears down defenses. It sets up the pass. I know a lot of people hate that take. Oh, you got to establish the run to set up the pass. In a situation like Derrick Henry, you absolutely set up the pass by getting the ball to him early and often. And, for the Titans overall, you don't pass up a player being your generational talent by just trying to fit in your new pieces. You build around that generational talent, and that is what Derrick Henry is. And you absolutely feed Derrick Henry all season. And, there will be plenty of opportunities along the way for guys like A.J. Brown and Julio Jones.
All right, and lastly here, the Raiders have signed Gerald McCoy to a 1-year deal. Do you think anything is left in the tank for Gerald McCoy going into this season?
I don't want to be rude to the guy. I think there's plenty of reason to have hope for him, but this seems like a strange move for the Raiders. They seem to fill up their entire roster with a lot of, 3-tech, 5-tech type guys, and I think McCoy is going to fit into that as well. I don't think McCoy's going to do much. I think probably the Raiders are going to try to get a massive rotation going to where each play is someone new and fresh, whether or not they're dominating with that one new fresh play, who knows? But yeah, I'm not super confident that McCoy is going to be the star of that defense or star of that position for the league either.
So perhaps, Michael, they'll be spending an early draft pick on a defensive lineman next year.
Oh, and I think that's very possible. And, other episodes we've been doing it where we have these top sleepers, and then we go into the top 10. We're going to change it up a little bit today. We're going to start out with the top 10, and then we'll talk about some potential risers that could fly up boards. For number 10, we're going to be talking about Haskell Garrett, the defensive tackle for Ohio State. Really, when you look at what he can do for the overall defensive line, he supplies plenty of size up the middle, an absolute tank of a man up there. And really, Ohio State has plenty of talent on the edge position, every year. But having a presence up the middle that is 6'2", 300 pounds, putting up some great snaps, Garrett does that. He has explosive ability. He has ability to really kind of create plays as a pass rusher. And I think for that, you have to really admire what Haskell Garrett can do. I'm not entirely sold on him being as high as a lot of people have hyped him. I know a lot of rankings have him earlier, but I think once the field kind of shakes out, we'll see him drop a little bit. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be looking at Haskell Garrett as a flop for the season. I think he's going to continue to play well. I just think that his overall skills will have some overall question marks for the transition to the NFL. At number 9, we got Corey Durden, the defensive tackle that is going to North Carolina State from Florida State. You look at what he does for Florida State on film, and really there's just so much that he can do from snap to snap. He is a perfect Alan McNeil replacement because of his 'ability to explode off the snap. He offers impressive size. He's got great frame. I don't think it gets appreciated enough. 6'5", 315 pounds. He is going to add weight in the NFL as well. Last year, only played in 3 games, so I think he got a little bit slept on, dropped a little bit off people's radars. But Corey Durden is going to really light things up, assuming he stays healthy. As a sophomore for Florida State, he put up 6.5 tackles for loss and 5 sacks. Really an impressive specimen on the field. 2020, again, with the weird season with some injuries, he was only able to play in 3 games. But in those 3, he still was able to put up half a sack, half a tackle for loss. I think with this season coming up, he's going to explode in a big way. And look out for North Carolina State to really use that to their advantage. And really, I think they could maybe capitalize on a skill set because they were just dealing with someone who is as talented as McNeil, who's kind of similar in terms of explosiveness off the snap. For D-line, number 8, we got Chris Hinton out of Michigan. You kind of look around at the Michigan history on the defensive line, and I don't think it's a shock that we're having another dominant piece coming. Obviously there's been a lot of talk about Aiden Hutchinson, talk about guys like Rashawn Gary and Kwity Paye from years before. Hinton, though, is definitely more inside. He's not someone that you're going to put out on the edge. 6'4", 305 pounds. Had a sack last year in just 5 games, 2.5 tackles for loss. He's got great size, great ability. For Michigan themselves, they are kind of looking for these young pieces that are really going to elevate the program. Hinton, I think, is a crucial piece in the middle for that defensive line. Going to be a true junior, offers plenty of upside to really explode onto the scene. And I think Hinton is definitely going to do that, and Michigan Wolverines will reap the benefits. For number 7, we got Nesta Jade Silvera, the defensive tackle for Miami. Looking around at the Miami defense, it's easy to kind of discredit a lot of the overall unit just because of that game against North Carolina where Javonte Williams and Michael Carter absolutely thrashed them. But that doesn't necessarily fall on the defensive line as much as it does the linebacker unit, where they were failing to stop runs that got into the second level and then it later turned into massive results. Now, for Silvera, there is an absolute promising play here. 6'2", 305 pounds, so a little bit smaller than your average defensive tackle, but he put up a monster season and exploded in a big way. 8 tackles for loss and 1 sack. I think that as Miami really grows their defense, especially with a younger unit this year compared to usual seasons, Silvera is going to have to be the leader of that defense. And we talked about it last year with guys like Jarrett Patterson, where when you're the leader of that unit, if the unit produces, then you're going to get some credit from that. And I think Silvera is going to be in a similar situation. A lot of young talent on that Miami Hurricanes defense. Something that I expect really should benefit him in terms of just added maturity to his game and just overall leadership that will probably be resonated to the NFL as well. And scouts will hear about it, and it'll just rise him up boards. At number 6, we're talking about Zach Carter, probably one of the most impressive producers in the pass rush category, a rotational kind of guy where you can put him on the outside, put him on the inside. I think he fits best as a 3-4 defensive end. Just last year, he had 9 tackles for loss and 5 sacks, 6'4", 290 pounds. I don't think he's going to weigh in at 290. I think the frame is impressive, but he needs to add a little bit of weight. Probably going to want to see him at a true 295 rather than a listed 290. So for that, Zachary Carter still has some things to do. But what he can do from snap to snap as a pass rusher is what the NFL is absolutely after, because really that's the name of the game right now, is creating interior pass rush to really make quarterbacks uncomfortable, blow up the run game, really just do what you can on the inside. Guys like Aaron Donald, guys like DeForest Buckner, guys like Fletcher Cox, they're all doing this at a high level, and because of that, they're getting lots of love around the league. While Zachary Carter still has a lot to go in terms of growing his game, in terms of becoming a top defensive player in the nation, I think there's still plenty of promise because of the pass rush ability that he has already showcased with his just numerous skill sets. And I think as a pass rusher and just as an overall piece for this Florida Gators defense, he's going to come in a major way and contribute again for this season. And in the NFL, I wouldn't be surprised to see him really step it up and get a major role early on in his career, despite maybe some expectations that he's a little bit raw as a prospect, just because I think pass rush ability, we saw it with guys like Milton Williams, is something that NFL front offices will sell out on. For number 5, we got Tyler Davis out of Clemson. And if you've heard anything about the Clemson Tigers defense, you've heard about Tyler Davis, Brian Breesy. There's just pieces all over this defensive line that are going to absolutely steal the show. Tyler Davis has been someone that's been in the system for a while, and I think because of that, he kind of gets underrated because a lot of the love is certainly going to a piece like Brian Breesy, who's this young phenom that's going to be coming up in a few years for this NFL draft talk. But that doesn't mean that Tyler Davis isn't going to really establish himself as a superstar either. We've seen it before with Clemson specifically, where guys like Christian Wilkins and Dexter Lawrence are each able to really thrive and show off insane ability just because of their dominance on the field, their dominance in terms of working together. And I think we're going to see that continue to happen for a player like Tyler Davis. I think he's going to maybe be outshined, maybe be a little bit in the shadow of Breesy, but he is still going to get plenty of love around draft circles. And he's someone that I think is mocked consistently in the first round. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if he's one of those guys that kind of either goes one way or the other, and not necessarily a huge drop-off, but just one of those situations where maybe he gets a little overlooked and goes second round, carves out a nice career for himself, though, and proves to be worth whatever pick is used on him. Or I could see it where he really kind of starts to gather the attention, really puts the world on notice for what he can do. And we see him really kind of fly up boards, and we see him go in that Christian Wilkins range where maybe people weren't expecting him to really kind of take off in the way that he did, but he really put together a strong presence on the field and in turn went high in the draft. Christian Wilkins is someone that I think has really put together an impressive string of seasons for the Miami Dolphins, and I'm really excited to see what he can do in this upcoming season. And I think Tyler Davis, well, I'm not saying that he's a Christian Wilkins comparison, I think is going to have a similar type of career.
Well, let me ask you a question here about, Clemson, because we're just talking about them. What did you think of Dexter Lawrence last year with the Giants? Because you mentioned him.
Yeah, I think he made some necessary strides. I really am a huge fan of him, but I want to see him in a nose tackle role. But ultimately, if you can contribute out of nose, then the team's most likely going to try to use you elsewhere because nose just isn't valued the same compared to how it used to be. There's some schemes that love having the, just nose guys very much available, but there's a lot of schemes that just kind of want big athletic defensive linemen. That's what you get out of a Dexter Lawrence, who really was able to put together a strong season. I know a lot of the attention kind of goes to Leonard Williams, who really put together production as a pass rusher, but that doesn't mean that Dexter Lawrence wasn't contributing in a major way. And I think while he might be a little underrated, he definitely caught a lot of attention for people who maybe were looking closer at his
the Giants. I mean, they're really counting on this year because Dave Tomlinson, Tomlinson's gone. He's with the Vikings now, so Lawrence needs to step up big time. And I also think that without Dalvin Tomlinson, Leonard they gave the big money, but I think he's going to take a step back. I don't expect him to have such another big year.
Yeah, I think for the Giants themselves, there's plenty of question marks on the defensive side of things, but plenty of question marks on the roster, but the defense, and especially the defensive line, is probably some of my lower concern. Really love the unit there, and I think there's plenty of pieces. Yes, Dalvin Tomlinson is a very talented player that could find that he's missed by the time the season's over. But from what I've seen from the Giants, from what I've seen from just their overall ability to plug in players and make it work, I think Dexter Lawrence will fill in at that nose tackle spot and really kind of have one of his better seasons.
We shall see. Yeah, I mean, the Giants, a little worried about them at the edge position, but the defense should be pretty solid for the most part this year.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And Joe Judge really overachieved last year with his ability to, just convert a lot of these guys that were kind of looked over on the defensive side and really turn them into elite pieces. James Bradbury now has kind of established himself as one of the top corners in the league. You got pieces like Dexter Lawrence that are really just dominating now. You got pieces like Leonard Williams who put together, a crazy season. And I think that's just something that the scheme helps out a lot. I'm not saying that these guys wouldn't find success outside of the scheme, but I think that the scheme mixed with the player talent that is available for them has really kind of shown that maybe the Giants aren't so far behind as a lot of people have kind of thought for a while.
Make or break year for Daniel Jones and Dave Gettleman, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And, I think if you don't really see that happen for the Giants, where Daniel Jones doesn't make that necessary stride, then the question then comes, are they going to really put all in on going and getting a veteran quarterback, or are they going to go back into that pool of rookie talent? And both present upside, both present question marks. And, I'm sure they'd love to have an Aaron Rodgers or maybe a cleared Deshaun Watson who's able to play right away. But it's really just going to depend on, the circumstances at hand. Can they be outbid, especially by a team maybe like Philadelphia, who has about as many draft picks, probably more, I believe, if you count the second round Indy pick. So it's going to be very interesting for what happens on the QB landscape after a year like this, where really the possibilities are endless.
No doubt about it. All right, Michael, we're building up a lot of anticipation here for number 4 on the list.
Number 4, Perrion Winfrey. And, watching Winfrey, you can see the pass rush ability almost immediately. And what a guy like Winfrey provides for Oklahoma Sooners is going to be just presence. Only half a sack last year, but I think he really created a lot of hurries on that defense. A lot of people will look at what Winfrey brings, look at what Nick Bonito brings, and say Oklahoma is going to have a pretty solid defensive line. Well, don't forget about Jalen Redmond, a defensive lineman for Oklahoma in 2019 who opted out this past season, put up 6.5 sacks, 11 tackles for loss. Oklahoma is going to have a very impressive defensive line with plenty of ability to really produce for that, pressure to get the QBs. And, for Redmond, Winfrey, Bonito, all these guys combined, it's just going to help everyone else, of the three and people outside of the three to really step up and produce and contribute to their stats. And I think Winfrey's going to be a major beneficiary of that because he consistently gets into the backfield with impressive bursts. But, I would like to see him capitalize on that burst and really turn it into production this upcoming season. Number 3, we got Jordan Davis, the nose tackle out of Georgia. You look around at the higher drafted defensive linemen, and they aren't necessarily the nose tackles that a lot of people will see right here, and other players around the league. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Davis isn't a top talent in this class. Davis will most likely be picked round 2, round 3, but I think his ability to stonewall the middle, really just dominate up front, not be moved off the ball, will show that he is just an absolute beast, an absolute monster in the middle that will never be overwhelmed, can take on double teams, can really solidify himself up the middle and just create a presence that is absolutely needed for this Georgia defense. If you're looking around for a nose tackle in this class, you should be wishing on every star you see that Jordan Davis ends up your team's nose tackle because you're going to keep him for a very long time and be very happy about the work that he does. The number 2 defensive lineman in this class, personally for me, is DeMarvin Leal. And, you look at what this class brings in terms of defensive line talent, and Leal is someone that I think is going to really just blow people away the closer we get to the draft. I think he's someone that already has the hype. I'm not saying that, he's someone underrated or anything, but this is someone that kind of compares to a Cameron Jordan. Now, I have him listed as defensive line because I feel like even in a 3-4, he stays at defensive end. But this is someone that personally is 4-3 D end, 3-4 D end. You can rotate him to 5-tech if you're in a 4-3, whatever. But for the most part, this is someone that's going to stay as a down lineman. And that's what Leal's going to do for your defense. Like I said, reminds me of Cameron Jordan. He has great size, but the speed added in with that size just makes him a menace for offenses. 7 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, even had an interception last year. He's got great size, great length. He fires off the ball, shows impressive bend, especially for a bigger guy. It's hard to find talents as intriguing as Leal. And, this whole class is going to be talked about for the defensive talent at the front 7 spots, really, the edge of Kayvon Thibodeau. And then the big 3 is Kayvon Thibodeau, George Karlaftis, and DeMarvin Leal. All 3 of these guys will most likely be top 12 picks. Maybe someone slips a little bit, but if that happens, it's more of a, why is this guy slipping? Not a, I guess we overrated him a little bit. All 3 of these guys should be absolute studs in the NFL, and the only reason it wouldn't happen is if someone were to have, either A, just pour off the field issues, or B, sadly have something happen injury-wise. For Leal, though, what he brings for this Texas A&M defense, especially one that loses Bobby Brown, that loses some pieces on this defense, he brings a superstar. And the presence of a superstar in college football is something that really can't be stated enough. Even on the defensive side of things, having a guy like Leal is incredibly huge for this Aggies defense. We've seen similar superstar level. Myles Garrett was probably even higher of a superstar level. So, we've seen the way that you can see benefits from having a member like this. And Leal is going to dominate, but the players around him that don't have to deal with as much blocking and as much focus, because all teams are going to be focused on Leal, is going to be tremendous. And for a roster as talented as the Texas A&M Aggies, that could be huge for their chances of really stealing the SEC this season.
Yeah, I think we've been saying it a lot. Me and Michael will do our predictions soon, but we're really like A&M this year in the SEC. I think if there's going to be a year to not crown Alabama as the SEC champions, this is as good a year as you're going to find.
Absolutely. Texas A&M is filled with talent, and the big question mark just comes down to that QB spot. Texas A&M is almost like the college football Denver Broncos, one of the better rosters out there, and really the question mark is what's going to happen at QB. And if they can find someone who can, do the job well enough at quarterback, then we could see Texas A&M being the national champion this year. That's how high the ceiling is for their talent. So keep an eye out for them and see what they can do, but they're very impressive.
They also benefit because Alabama also has quarterback question mark here. So it'll be new. So this is, an ideal year. And maybe this is a year you see two SEC teams in the college football playoff.
I think that's very likely. The number one defensive lineman, we talked about him, name dropped him a little bit earlier, George Karlaftis, a player that I am just incredibly impressed with. Superb power, fires off the ball well, and he converts that power into collapsing the pocket. A lot of people don't give him the credit that he deserves, because of only playing in a limited amount of games last year. He had 2 sacks. He didn't, explode off the stat sheet, I guess, but he's a dominant player, and he was able to dominate in all ways, both in 2019 and 2020. Just an absolute beast for the defense. I think that this is someone that is underrated, really, because from what I've seen, he's generally seen as the third guy for this defensive end position. A lot of people have Thibodeau number 1, Leal number 2, Karlaftis number 3. I think Karlaftis is closer to number 1 than he is at number 3. And all of these 3 are very close, very talented players. But Karlaftis is an absolute monster. And we'll see it with a full season for Purdue, assuming that he plays the entire year. And, if you've been sleeping on this guy, it's time to take notice, because he is going to tear things up for Purdue. He's going to dominate the Big Ten. He's probably going to be one of the defensive players of the year for the Big Ten. I think he's going to put together a double-digit sack season. And when the NFL comes calling, I think he's going to be easily a top 8 pick.
Yeah. Do you get some Bosa vibes out of him?
Yeah, I do. I think that, the Joey Bosa of Ohio State compared to the Joey Bosa of the Chargers are two people viewed a little bit differently. Bosa at Ohio State was someone that was kind of viewed as how Karlaftis is. He's very talented. He has some nice power, but you're probably going to want to keep him as a down lineman, all that. But then Bosa lost a little bit of weight, kind of got in a little bit better shape. And really, he dominated both in the 3-4, dominated in the 4-3, was able to work as a stand-up pass rusher and still just continue to create havoc in backfields. And I think Karlaftis could very well do similar things. I think he could drop a little bit, shed a little bit of weight, and really still contribute in a dominant way as a stand-up rusher. I just love his overall strength. I think the refinement will come. I think there's plenty of refinement already, but I think just overall continuing to get that development, get another season under his belt, we're going to see some major strides out of all 3 of these guys. But Karlaftis, for me, is a dominant defensive end that is going to make some team very happy for very long, get a very big contract, and still just continue to go to work every Sunday.
All right, Mike, a lot of debate here on the comments section, but perhaps you want to chime in now. Maybe you want to show your sleepers first. Up to you.
Well, we'll bring it up. No Aiden Hutchinson. Cringe, simply cringe. And then good Aiden is overrated. Yeah, I think I side with Samantha here. I think Aiden Hutchinson isn't necessarily the player he's hyped up to be. I think that there is some promise to his game. I'm not saying that he's someone that I think is just bad, but I think he isn't going to be as valued when the time comes for the draft. I think he's someone that kind of is hyped up a little more because he's left over from someone that was expected for last draft. And we saw it even last season. His stock was dropping a little bit, but then it's kind of gotten this reboost because we just don't have all these players that are getting the attention. It happens every draft cycle. These third-round talents become mocked in the first round. These fifth-round talents be talked about as second-round, third-round picks. Yeah, there's some guys that will make that jump and make that happen, but for a lot of these pieces, they're just going to kind of get back to what draft range they were in. I think he is someone that I'm going to be lower on even compared to the consensus when the time comes. But, yeah, just not in my top 10, at least not right now.
Fair enough.
So for the defensive line spot, yes, these 10 are very talented, but don't be surprised about these potential sleepers to come up and make a name for themselves in the draft cycle throughout the course of the season. And number one, we're going to talk about Jalen Haynes, a guy that I talked about on the G5 episode, a dominant piece for the UTSA Roadrunners, one of the best mascots, in my opinion, out there. You know, you look around at his frame, and he's maybe not the biggest guy, 6'2", 290, but he has been able to produce in a multitude of seasons. And I think as he continues to really get another year under his belt, he's going to get a little bit more attention. I think he would have gotten that attention this year had it been a full regular season. But now he gets another year. He's going to be a fifth-year senior. I think he's going to, obviously get a little underrated because he's at a G5 school that's a little bit smaller. But you see what he can do from snap to snap, and he's able to make plays as a pass rusher. He's able to make plays in the run game. He's got a nice base despite being a little bit smaller of a defensive lineman. I think there's plenty of upside here, and he's someone that really could surprise people when the time comes. Number 2 for the sleeper list is Zach Pickens, the former highly touted recruit at South Carolina. Really showed some nice flashes last year for the Gamecocks, but I think there's still plenty left to do in terms of just establishing himself as a name at the college football level and as a prospect. Had 35 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, and a sack last year. Stands 6'3", 300 pounds. This is someone that really could make that huge jump to where he's being talked about in the first round. Now, Pickens obviously has the athletic background. You can't really be the top touted recruit without it. But getting that refinement, getting that production, getting consistency from snap to snap is going to be absolutely huge for him. And for South Carolina, with all the pieces that are changing, he is going to be someone dependent on to really kind of be that consistent piece. And I think he's going to really meet those calls and probably see a huge boost in his stock because of it. Number 3, and I'm really glad that I'm able to include him because I gained about 80 Texas followers last night. So Alfred Collins, the defensive lineman.
Hook 'em, Michael.
Yeah, hook 'em all the way. And now that I have some hook 'em on my graphics, they aren't going to be coming out my neck. Alfred Collins is an impressive defensive lineman that really showed off some promise last year. In 10 games, he had 2.5 tackles for loss and 1.5 sacks. And that was in his first year really getting time. 6'5", 305 pounds. I think he's someone that is going to get a lot of love because of his athletic frame, because of his tremendous size, and because of his ability to create havoc in backfields. I think this is someone that really, him and Keandre Coburn are going to really help out Texas for what they're lacking in pass rush ability. And, Alfred Collins will definitely have a lot of question marks in terms of can he really take that next step. But if he's able to, we'll see it in a major way, and that'll be huge for Texas because those edge rushers that is maybe a little bit of a weaker position this year because of losing Joseph Osai, because of having a lack of experience in that unit, that would be absolutely huge for their ability to produce on the outside. The number 2 guy to keep an eye on is Cameron Young, And this is an interesting situation because he's not really someone that's getting a lot of attention around college football. 6'3", 320 pounds, 2.5 tackles for loss and 1 sack last year in just 6 games. He was a sophomore. So working in a rotational role, I think he's someone that really stood out to me, but I think in a season-long opportunity, we could start to see some other people really start to notice him as well. I think he's got tremendous frame, obviously can play nose tackle, can move over, though, if needed to 3-tech. I think he has the burst and ability to do so. There is plenty of talent at the defensive line spot in the SEC, but Cameron Young is another name that you need to keep on your list and keep an eye on this season, because I think as he starts to really get the full role on that defensive line, he's going to establish himself as a name to watch around the college football world. And for the last potential riser, we're talking about another guy that didn't even play last year, and that is Travis Jones, the UConn defensive tackle that really just blows you away with his overall frame. He's a tremendous nose tackle for the UConn Huskies. In 2019, though, he put up 3.5 sacks and 6 tackles for loss, and that's extremely enticing for a guy that has that frame, 6'4", 336 pounds. So he's a nose tackle through and through, but if he's able to produce out of that nose tackle role as a pass rusher, if he's able to have that athleticism, then you're looking at a guy that could really start to get a lot of love around college football. And, you know, we saw it with guys like Dexter Lawrence, where even though they were these nose tackles and well-known nose tackles, they offered that tremendous ability to where they were brought in even early in the draft. And Travis Jones probably has that upside more than anyone to really explode in a big way in 2020 or 2021 and really capitalize on that to become a highly touted draft pick in this class.
Interesting with UConn. I would say they're no longer in the AAC. Used to be a school that would get some good prospects, especially cornerbacks in the NFL. I'd be interested to see if they're able to return to that now in the Star Conference, obviously.
Yeah, it's a very interesting situation, especially because last year they just didn't play at all. And, you know, hopefully, despite the missed season, we still see plenty of talent return for UConn. And, you know, we see some exciting players come out of their school for the upcoming years that happen while college football is still in place.
Yes.
And, you know, we moved on, but real quick, came to my mind during the little bit of talk about, you know, the quarterbacks and everything. So I just want to pitch this out as a final send-off. So all these QBs are kind of available, right? There's, you know, Deshaun Watson, there's Aaron Rodgers, and, you know, there's other pieces as well that could potentially become available, you know, Russell Wilson, whatever. If this is Tom Brady's final send-off, do you think we could see the Buccaneers try to make this crazy trade to where the window stays open with an Aaron Rodgers stepping into Tampa Bay or with a Deshaun Watson stepping into Tampa Bay? Or do you think that they're committed to trying to make Kyle Trask the future?
No, I mean, if they could keep all their vets and sign Aaron Rodgers, that's what they'll do. I mean, and I guess Watson, I can't give you a clear answer because I need to know what's going to happen with the suspension. But if they can get Aaron Rodgers, I mean, I think absolutely they would do that. Because even so, you get Aaron Rodgers, I think he's going to play 3 years, 4 years. You could still hold Trask in the wings if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Just something that came to mind. Probably won't ever happen. Probably not financially feasible.
I think Brady's going to play another 2 years at least.
I think Giselle might kill him before he retires.
Yeah.
She was telling him to retire like 3 years ago, and now he just keeps going. She's got to be tired of it. She's just punching walls now. That's all we got for you here on Destination Draft Day. We hope you enjoyed the interior defensive line talk. On Friday or on Monday, we'll talk to you about the edge rushers of this class. And, you know, we talked about it a little bit earlier. It's a very talented class. So be ready, be prepared, because this is going to be an exciting defensive draft class. We got plenty of players to talk about. For now, though, enjoy yourself. Have a great weekend. From Nick Durst and Michael Rockman, this is Destination Draft Day. We want to thank everyone in the comment section. Thank LandryFootball.com for the opportunity to broadcast across this platform. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you then.
Take care.